Hello. Let me test this. Okay, great. Hi, everyone. So, collaboration through gamification. I see the world through a team lens. That means that there are groups of people that I like to call teams, and they have set of common values that brought them together, common vision, ideally, and surprisingly for me, they have a common enemy. And that enemy, I'll explain about it later, but that enemy is something that fascinates me. Enemy can be different things. It can be a real person or a hypothetical object. So I'm Beata, and I've been coaching teams, organizations, and leadership for the past decade. And my goal for the next decade is to gamify your team experience. That's your team and everyone else's teams too, hopefully. And what does that really mean? To explain this, let me take you back to year 2020, everyone's favorite, right? 2020, we were traveling so much and having fun with our dogs and so on. Not really. So I've been working with this organization for quite some time, not super long, 6 months or so. So I got to know people, they trusted me, and I was able to, play around with them a bit. But as you know, everyone was feeling lonely, overwhelmed, all these pains that we had, all the things that made us sad in 2020, they were just simply disturbing. So I decided that we will change that. We are working from home. I had even people working from home from a small village where there was power outage every day at 3 o'clock for 1 hour. And when there was connection, you could hear like roosters in the background and chickens and things like that. So it was quite unusual, but we still made it work. So I decided to gamify their experience. But have you ever tried to teach someone something and they've heard about it for 100 times before? It feels like teaching Agile to these teams was something that they've seen and heard before 100 times. It is a little bit like asking, when your mother is asking you, sorry, I'm nervous. There I am, nervous. It's a bit like asking your mother asking you, what do you do for your living? And you say, especially as a coach, you explain, and she's like, that's a bit boring. Can we move on and can we eat something? So she's a bit like Jonathan here on the picture. So I had to do something different. I had to make them believe. That it's not about Agile, it's about their team, surprisingly, right? It's never about Agile, it's always about the team. And I decided to, wrong picture, spoiler alert. I asked them plenty of feedback, and one of the ways that I interact with the teams is always to get feedback. And one of the things that I heard is that during the pandemic, this is pre-Zoom fatigue diagnosed from the social media and the world. They said that one of the things that we struggle with is time. Time is our biggest enemy. And that means 3 hours in a workshop, full day of activities. It's impossible. We can't do it. Nope. We can't. We are stressed. There are stakeholders pressuring us right, left, and center. And yeah, that's it. Deal with it, coach. So I was given 1 hour from them. 1 hour is all they could do. They didn't say 1 hour per day, per month. I just took advantage and did 1 hour. And with 1 hour, it felt like this for me. You've seen that before. It felt like, why do I only get 1 hour? I want more. I want full day, In other companies, people have budgets and they go on offsites and they do fun things. And why not me? That was impossible. So I realized that there is something missing in this team, and clearly it was a lack of motivation. And this is not just one team, this is 3 teams we're talking about, almost full department. They lacked motivation. And to understand gamification, we first need to jump into to motivation. And I'm not going to bore you with motivation theory. You've probably all read Drive by Daniel Pink and all these other amazing resources. But Elisa Meckler, who is a gamification researcher, she defines motivation as the energy to take action as well as the direction in which the energy is then moved. And I find it fascinating because it is the energy. It's something that gets you going. It makes you move. It makes you motivated, right? It's the energy is the actual motivation, surprisingly. So I went into my little loop of, motivation. Who believes in that anyways, Can't people just be motivated? They can work together. But remember the pandemic and all the other stories. So I asked myself this question, right? What was first? Motivation or lack of motivation? And there was no answer to it. It felt like the chicken and egg situation. So I dug deeper and deeper, and I dug so deep that I got into my brain. And in my brain, I found all these exciting chemicals, right? Chemicals that make me do things, make people do things for some strange reason, right? Whether to achieve goals. So when I achieve goals as an individual, the chemical called dopamine kicks in. When I relieve pain, alleviate stress through exercise and laughter, I get endorphins. And in my case, that team was laughing a lot, so they already had something going on. They always joked around and they mocked each other in bizarre ways. Then on the other side, we have the group chemicals. So when we are feeling a sense of belonging, trust, and strong relationship, oxytocin, the hormone of the chemical of happiness, right, kicks in. And when we are feeling important, significant, and status, serotonin kicks in. And that one is quite important in this case because in gamification, just like in games, you want to win. So you want to be better than others in some way or another. So another way of looking at motivation was intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. And intrinsic motivation, this is important in terms of gamification and a group, because intrinsic motivation, in this case, is like running because you love it. You get up in the morning and you take your dog for a walk and you end up running with him, around the block, and it's really fun. So you do it because you love it. And extrinsic motivation, in this case, is like running a marathon just to win the medal. And when it comes to gamification, especially in context of a team gamification, you need to find the right balance between the two. So making sure that there is some extrinsic motivation, but don't just focus on the extrinsic motivation. Also have the element of achieving a goal. So gamification. I mentioned this word a few times, and you've heard about gamification for a long time because everything is gamified nowadays. Our teams are not yet. So back to Elsa, the researcher. She says adding game elements such as points, emblems, and leaderboards with the intention to increasing motivation and improving the user experience. It is characterized by using game design in non-game contextual environment with the aim of making the user feel more engaged and improve an experience. I love this definition, if you can say, because it really focuses on improving user experience. And in my case, the user is the team. So I decided to put together something for my brain to be able to understand gamification. And this is super simplified, pretty much for my brain. And since one of my top strengths is creativity, I had to creatively solve this challenge. So gamification basics. You take a group of people and you ask yourself, what motivates them? And you try to find out whether they like to explore different worlds, different planets, different lands. Do they like to compete? Do they want to create something, like with Lego and all these serious games, do they like to collaborate? Ideally, you mix all these 4 elements. Then you try to understand their needs. And this is like the basic needs for gamification here. So they need, the needs are competence, relatedness, and autonomy, not countonomy. Fun word. So next step is, that's brilliant. I think I'm going to rename that. Who wants to be autonomous? So next thing you do is you try to identify challenges and opportunities. So things that will motivate it is leaderboards, scorecards, badges, points, and countdown. And when your team is asking you, are we there yet, right? You put a storyline, avatars, and a fancy design, or not so fancy. It can be like a paper and a pen design, as long as you're kind of design your game. Next step is you need to get your team or user, and in this context, a team, into a flow. So we get our best work done when we are in a flow. It's the same with games. When we're in a game, we feel like we're in a different world. We can save the world. We can beat the enemy. We can, just have fun, really. And when you're in that flow, you feel fulfilled, you feel happy, you feel motivated. So you get team to that state through special missions and secret objectives. And lastly, you try to identify all the pains that they have. I'll show you a bit of them later, examples. So all the things that people complain to you about, all the things that you read on Slack, all the things that you're like, they are not doing it, but they could. So the complaints that you also see. And then these are your bad guys. These are your enemies. Wait a second. Yeah. And then at the end, you are happy and you got your learning objective fulfilled. There you go. So this is the why, right? So if you know how to do gamification now of your team, now there is tons of different data you can look into. There's countless research. I recently contributed to research in Uppsala University in Sweden about gamification of everything in our lives. It's fascinating research since many, many years. So since we gamify our apps, our daily lives, we also gamify our employee experience. It's very common to gamify onboarding and very successful. 90% of employees are more productive when they use gamification, a study says. And 69% of workers are more likely to stay at the company for over 3 years when tasks are gamified. This is especially important when it comes to millennials, which is the fastest growing generation when it comes to people working working right now. So by the year of 2025, 75% of people who are actively working, will be millennials. And these are people who grew up with games, right? So there has to be an element of looking into that. And 95% of employees enjoy using gamified systems. So let's jump into a few examples. This is one of the most successful gamification examples when it comes to product, because Starbucks gamified it, giving stars to their users, to the people who buy coffee, not users, right? Like it's coffee buyers. Their goal was to have more people coming back to Starbucks. They had also a goal to increase their revenue. And they succeeded with that because 40% of their revenue came through that gamification solution. And people were ending up buying like customized coffee, or like they would be, if I buy cappuccino, they will remember that I buy it. And I would buy it with stars, like funny points and things like that. People loved it. It was very successful. Another example is a famous, what is this game? Has anyone played it? one person played Pokemon Go? 2 people, exactly. So Pokemon Go, fantastic invention with the goal to make people move. We've been sitting around, this is pre-pandemic, but we've been sitting around in pandemic, but moving is something that is important. And so you basically had to walk around the city. Occasionally you would see people in the underground or on the streets in the groups, and they would try to find a secret Pokemon, right? And that Pokemon would be hidden in the streets of any city in the world. And I had friends actually that they would hunt Pokemon so much. They would, like one of my friends broke a leg because he had to get to a place to move, to get down that hill, and then he just tripped over. So it got him moved, but it also got him a bit blocked for a couple of months. So let me jump into an example that I did with the team at the beginning. So just briefly, I'll describe it. You can ask me more about it later. During the pandemic, the team is distributed, and that was one of the problems. And so I created the super team quest. The quest lasted for 4 weeks. Each week was a different mission or different level, as you want to call it. And I would use very simple mechanisms to kind of send the quest to them, or what's the mission this week, and collect their feedback. I would just simply use an email to send them their little things that they had to do. And one of the 2 examples you see here, the yellow one is the quest, the mission that they had to do is they had to learn something together. And they had to simply read an article together, not a book, that's very long, article. And that article then they would discuss, debate, rate without a coach in the room. So super self-organizing. And who got the most badges, which I would also send them, sneaky here, sneaky there, a badge comes at the end of each level. Who gets the most badges wins. And the winning team got 18 out of 20 badges. That's incredibly successful because they kind of devoted themselves to this game entire month, to the quest. They were asking, when is the next mission coming? Or after the quest, they were like, when is the next quest coming? We've, of course, did a few more quests, like even simple Agile training. I gamified to do like fruit market. So you don't just go to a random training. You actually collect fruits as a reward through it. And they really enjoyed it. There was a few more. And you see the bad guys there. They were like, the stakeholder comes and asks, can you do this last minute feature? And I'm seeing it in a Slack channel, and there's a bad guy on your screen. So people were very like, oh no, not the bad guy again. I have to do something about it. So let's crack this piñata and see what candy is inside of the team gamification in this case. So this is like even more simplified candy for me, and hopefully for you. You can take away and build your games with your teams. You take, I can see that some colors are missing. You take your team pains, add some, and from those pains you list them, all the pains, like I said before to you. You take them and you list them, and you're like everything you hear in the virtual corridors, and you list them. Then try to put like really pink glasses on and try to like pretend that you're extremely positive and optimistic person, and you try to see all the opportunities through it. So like if someone tells you one thing, you're like, oh, I'm sure this can be fixed another way. It's like if we're working remotely, oh, there's a chance to be asynchronous. And then you also look into the basics, which is their environment, the environment they were before, and then the environment that they enjoy being in, the ideal state. And there, boom, you have your game goal. And the game goal is, of course, very important. This is the example, just a lot of text, but this is the example that you can see here. So the actual team that I worked with, one of the things was, lack of time, lack of trust, lack of self-organizing, and my favorite, no budget. I don't know if you've heard that before, but I go from company to company, and I often hear there is no budget, right? And we try to find out, what do you really mean there's no budget? It usually means there's like no money to do things. So from these pains, one of the opportunities was to do it asynchronously. So meaning I wasn't present as a facilitator, as a coach. And the team that I talked about before, the teams, they were really competitive. And they were enjoying all these like foosball, shuffleboard games that they had in the office back in the days, back in the year, 2019. So they liked that, and that inspired me also that made me feel that they will be playful. So yeah, then boom, I had this goal: enable autonomous teams and boost resilience during the pandemic. So now let's jump into quickly to shorter 2 examples from Google. This is an example of when Google tried to recruit people, right? Has anyone seen this before? Or are you trying to solve it right now? It's like, So, everyone wants to work at Google. And Google is like, no, you can't work here. It's only for special people that know how to solve this. And once you solved it, you got to another page, another level, where you would be able to apply to work at Google, right? So that way, their pain was that they had too many applicants, and then they would filter all these smart developers through this simple billboard. I've seen few of them actually in Stockholm Underground. There is like a consultancy company that puts some kind of code, and they're like, then solve this and apply and visit our website. Seems to be quite entertaining. And Google is also running this famous code jam that is currently happening. Has anyone ever contributed to Code Jam? Heard of Code Jam? Yay! Good. I hope you won. So Code Jam is like the biggest competition for developers out there, and Google is sponsoring it. And this is a really good example when it comes to the leaderboard, because you can see who's currently winning, and you can see different problems. And if you click on these different problems, like spiraling into control and pixelated circle, you can actually see that there are code challenges that are really fun. I encourage you to do that afterwards. This page is up now because they're running the current round 2. And quite cool, you see who's winning. Hope he wins, or she, or they. So I'm not going to give you more examples, because there's like the world of examples will never end, and we would be here for another hour at least. So if you're interested in gamifying your team experience, follow the quote of the famous tennis player. Start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can. So don't complain, or don't say like, oh, I don't have budget, I can't do this, I can't do that. Just start where you are. Your game can be very simple. Your game can be really complex. It can be nicely designed if you have access to people and that can design it for you, or you have those super skills. Or it can be super simple. So start where you are and use all the skills that you have. But if you don't have those skills, and if you're feeling a bit lazy and you want to try something I'm currently working on, coming soon, so this link there is not working yet. It will work in 24 hours. I started to create this team booster quest because I felt like the teams that I've worked with enjoyed it so much. So what if the world could enjoy some of it? And I created already the first level called the Trust Village. And surprisingly, in there, hopefully, at the end, you will be able to gain trust with your team. And we all know trust is not like a binary thing. It's just you work with it and you work with it. But this is one of the ways that you can at least start having conversations about it. And there will be, and currently I'm working on other levels. If you're interested, ping me. I'm happy to share them with you. So yeah, this is like the zoom in on the booster quest. And hopefully you'll get there at the end into Mount Collaboration, right? And we know that Mount is just the peak. And once you're at the peak, you need to get down from the mountain. So hopefully there will be a booster quest too. So yeah, to summarize, gamification can lift your team. Don't be afraid to try it. It's really fun, but it's like fun, not like ha 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 fun, but it's fun because it makes your brain tickle. You know, it makes those chemicals there interact with each other, and maybe your neurons are also having a little bit of interaction there. It's motivating for your brain, so it makes you happy. Win-win. And focus on the goal and use badges and points only for fun. Use the badges. Like, there's so much talk out there in the gamification world. Oh, badges, maybe not so motivating, or it's just people will win things. I think it's really fun, and I think it gets people to interact together. So use those badges, but focus on the goal and make sure that you have a goal first. This is like a 1% of the resources out there that I love. If you're interested in researching more, start with watching Jane McGonigal, her famous TED Talk. She's amazing. She inspired me to do all of this. Her TED Talk even gives you 7.5 minutes extra of your life. So that's like, wow, you leave that and you feel more. You will live longer. And a community that I'm part of called Play 14. Anyone here part of Play 14? No? Okay, we bring it to Krakow then, Play 14. It's really good. It's a lot of fun, so let's see how that can be done. And you can see Yu Kai Chu, that's the gamification without badges and points, like a really thick book. I encourage you to also look into it. So that's it. I really hope that you leave today inspired to gamify your team. I will be here today, tomorrow, and actually for the next 2 months. So you can meet me for coffee if you want, anywhere. And yeah, and the free trust boosting mission is coming within 24 hours to this link. So I hope you can download it and enjoy it as much as I did making it. So thank you. Thanks, everyone, and have a great conference.